Ex-star player with broken knee coaches high school kids. What happened next will shock you. This man didn't just coach a team. He restored belief. He built a family. And today, thanks to him, many of our boys are going to college. Not just as athletes, but as men. Ben stood slowly, emotion swelling in his chest. The applause was deafening, but he didn't hear it. His eyes found Nils, who nodded at him with a calm, respectful smile. The kind that says, "You changed my life." The whistle echoed faintly across the dew-soaked field, swallowed quickly by the chill of the early morning fog. Ben stood motionless at the edge of the pitch, hands buried deep in the pockets of his weathered windbreaker, eyes fixed on the crumbling bleachers across from him. The place looked more like a forgotten pasture than a football field. A rusted goalpost leaned awkwardly to one side. The white paint on the field lines had faded into obscurity. Weeds tangled along the sidelines like nature was trying to reclaim the space. The school couldn't afford better, and honestly, Ben didn't care enough to complain. Not anymore. He winced slightly as he shifted his weight. His right knee, the one that had betrayed him years ago, still ached when it was cold. He hated that. He hated this place. And most of all, he hated the cruel twist of fate that had turned him from a rising football star into a high school coach no one respected. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," he muttered to himself, jaw clenched. "I was meant for more than this." The sound of chaotic shouting broke his thoughts. A dozen teenage boys were tumbling onto the field, some still stuffing jerseys into their shorts, others laughing and kicking an old deflated ball around like they were in a playground. No formation. No discipline. No care. Ben sighed. "All right," he called out in a gruff voice. "Line up. Let's pretend we're here to practice." Some of them groaned audibly. One of them, a lanky kid with a mop of curly hair, rolled his eyes and muttered, "Why? We're not gonna win anything anyway." Ben heard it. He always did. But he didn't respond. What was the point? He hadn't believed in this team any more than they believed in themselves. The truth was, Ben never wanted to coach. He never chose this life. One wrong move in a big game, one sharp pain in his knee, and the dream he had chased for 15 years collapsed like a house of cards. Now, he was here. Coaching a team that couldn't play, in a school that had no money, for kids who didn't even want to be there. He glanced up at the sky. It was gray. Heavy. Almost poetic. Every morning felt like a punishment. And yet, something in him stayed. Not hope. Not passion. Just inertia. Habit. But life has a strange way of planting seeds in the soil of resentment. Ben had no idea that beneath the surface of this broken team and bitter routine, something was beginning to stir. He just hadn't seen it yet. Ben squinted from the sidelines, arms folded across his chest. Practice was barely dragging along, the boys half jogging through drills, but something caught his eye. Something different. Nil. The boy rarely spoke. 16, pale, wiry, always wearing a hoodie under his jersey no matter the heat. He was the kind of player who was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, but never fought to play. He sat on the bench like it was home, never complaining, never asking for a chance. But today, Ben saw it. The team's smallest player, Jamal, was being pushed around by another boy twice his size. The coach opened his mouth, about to bark an order, but he didn't have to. Nil was already moving. "Back off," Nil snapped, stepping between them. The bully smirked. "What are you gonna do, bench boy?" "I said, back off." There was no yelling. No fists. Just a quiet force in Nil's voice that stopped the bigger boy cold. Jamal, wide-eyed, looked up at Nil like he just witnessed something unbelievable. Ben stood still. Something in his chest shifted. Later that evening, after the field had emptied and the sun dipped behind the school roof, casting long shadows on the cracked asphalt, Ben found himself sitting in his cramped office, staring at the file marked Nil Harrow. He had never opened it before. Maybe because he didn't want to care. But now, something inside told him he needed to. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Mother, unemployed. Alcohol dependency. Emergency contact, none. Nil had been the adult in his home since he was 10. Grocery shopping, making sure the bills were paid when they were. Looking after his younger sister when no one else would. The boy had grown up before he ever got the chance to be a child. And yet, he still showed up. Every day. Even if it was just to sit on the bench. Ben leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The silence in the room was heavy. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel bitterness toward his job. He felt something else. Something deeper. Empathy. That evening, he sat next to Nil on the bleachers after practice, the lights humming faintly above them, casting a soft golden glow across the empty field. You know, Ben began, voice quiet, most kids your age are only just learning how to deal with life. Nil shrugged, eyes fixed ahead. I don't really have that luxury. Ben nodded. You don't talk much. Not much to say. They sat in silence for a moment. You protected Jamal today, Ben said. That was brave. Nil gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. He reminds me of my sister. Ben turned to face him. Nil. I've seen a lot of players in my life. But you're someone people lean on. That means something. Nil didn't respond right away. Then, with a voice barely above a whisper, he said, No one's ever said that to me before. Ben's chest tightened. In that moment, he realized that maybe coaching wasn't about trophies or tactics. Maybe, just maybe, it was about moments like this, moments where a lost boy heard someone say, I see you. The afternoon sun hung low over the field, casting golden slants of light across the grass. For once, there was no whistle, no shouting, no drills. Just silence. The boys sat in a circle on the patchy turf, dirt smudging their socks and sweat still clinging to their brows. Cleats dug into the earth, and a gentle breeze whispered through the nearby trees. They looked confused at first. Why no practice? Why were they just sitting? Ben stood in the center, a calm presence among them. His voice, when he finally spoke, was steady, low, but warm. Sometimes, it's not just our legs or lungs that make us slow on the field, he began. It's the stuff we carry. The weight no one sees. The boys looked at each other, unsure. Ben took a slow breath and extended his hands, palms up. If you're willing, he said, stretch out your hands. I want you to share something that's been holding you back. Something real. Something heavy. The air stilled. A long silence. A few of the boys fidgeted, eyes darting toward the ground. But one by one, hands began to stretch forward, uncertain but willing. Ben knelt in the circle now, sitting with them. We're a team, he said. And teams don't just run plays together, we carry each other. So today, we're letting some of that weight go. Right here. Right now. A boy named Marcus spoke first. He was always quick on his feet but easily frustrated. My dad, he left last year. Just packed up and never came back. I thought if I trained harder, maybe I'd forget. But I can't. I'm angry all the time. Ben nodded slowly. slowly, saying nothing, just letting the words settle. Then it was Tyler. My grades are trash. Coach, if I fail another class, I can't even play. My mom works 3 jobs. She's never home. I don't know who to ask for help. Each voice cracked something open. Each confession made the silence that followed feel more sacred. Then it was Nil. He hadn't raised his hand. He sat with his elbows on his knees, head low, fingers fidgeting with a loose thread on his shorts. Everyone was quiet, waiting, but not pressuring. Ben looked at him gently. You don't have to, Nil. But if you want to, we're here. A long breath escaped from Nil's lips. Then, slowly, he looked up. His eyes were glassy, but he wasn't ashamed. My mom drinks, he began, voice barely above a whisper. She gets real bad sometimes. Sometimes she forgets she even has kids. The boys listened, still, respectful. I make sure my sister eats. I keep the door locked when she passes out. I tell the school she's sick when she's too drunk to get out of bed. I've been doing it since I was 10. His voice cracked, but he pushed through. I don't come here to play football. I come here because it's the only place that feels normal. Like maybe I don't have to fix everything. Ben felt the tightness in his own throat. He wanted to speak, but Nil wasn't done. I sit on the bench because I don't want anyone to expect anything from me. I'm tired. I don't have more to give. But today, for the first time, I felt like maybe I wasn't alone. The silence afterward was thick with emotion. Then, slowly, one by one, hands reached out. On Nil's back. His shoulder. A soft pat. A brotherhood, wordless but real. Ben wiped at his eyes before anyone could notice. We're not here to be perfect, he said, voice low. We're here to carry each other through the mess. This, what you just did, that's strength. And from that day forward, something shifted. On the field. In the locker room. In their hearts. They were no longer just a broken team. They were family. From that day on, everything changed. Not overnight. But steadily, like the sunrise breaking over a long, dark night. There was something different in the air during practice. The boys no longer ran drills like it was punishment, they moved like they believed. They called out encouragements, laughed louder, ran harder. When one fell, another offered a hand before the dust had settled. They had each other's backs now. Not just on the field, but in life. And Ben? He was changing, too. Where once he stood distant, counting minutes until practice ended, he now leaned in. He watched. He guided. He cared. He started arriving earlier than the boys and staying long after they'd left. He was no longer the man who felt trapped in a life he never asked for. He was beginning to understand something he'd never allowed himself to believe. Maybe this was the dream. Maybe he didn't have to be a football star to become someone that mattered. All right, set up for sprints, he called one afternoon, voice sharp, but not harsh. Let's go. Show me what you've got. And that's when he noticed it, Nil, tearing across the field like a gust of wind. Fast. Effortless. The ball glued to his feet as he danced around cones with precision, strength, and instinct. Ben blinked, caught off guard. When did that happen? Who taught you that turn? He called out. Nil slowed, grinning. Nobody. Just figured it out. Again, Ben said, nodding, stepping onto the field now. This time, add pressure. The boys lined up to defend him, but Nil weaved through them like they were statues. A slick fake, a fast pivot, a perfect shot, goal. The net rippled, and silence followed, then cheers. Ben laughed. A real, full laugh. He jogged up to Nil and clapped him on the back. "You've got something special, kid," he said, meeting his eyes. "You're not just good, you're great." Nil looked down, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, coach." "No," Ben said, softer now. "Thank you." From that moment on, Ben trained Nil like he'd train a pro. Not because he wanted to live through him, but because he believed in him. He believed in all of them. Because he wasn't just building a team anymore, he was building people. And in doing that, he'd found something deeper than fame, deeper than glory. He'd found purpose. The bleachers used to sit half empty. Now they thundered with chants and cheers. Students who once mocked the team now wore their jerseys. Parents who'd never cared about football brought signs, packed lunches, and pride. The school cafeteria buzzed with game day talk. Something miraculous had happened. A team once known as the joke of the league was now its greatest surprise. They were winning. Game after game, they outplayed, outpaced, and outlasted their opponents. And at the center of it all was Nil. Every time his foot touched the ball, people leaned forward. He moved like the game lived in his bloodstream. Fast, graceful, and fiercely precise. Scouts began to take notice. Opposing coaches whispered his name before kickoff. "He's the one," they said. "Mark number 7. Shut him down." But no one could. And it wasn't just Nil. The whole team had transformed. Marcus, the angry kid, had become a solid defender, calm and reliable. Tyler, the struggling student, found purpose as the team's best midfielder and earned tutoring help from teammates who wanted to see him stay on the field. They believed in themselves now. And in each other. Ben stood on the sidelines, heart pounding at every pass, every goal, every comeback. He shouted instructions, yes, but he also clapped, smiled, hugged. His heart was all in. He no longer walked with the weight of bitterness. Coaching didn't feel like a curse anymore. It felt like destiny. When they reached the state finals, no one was more shocked than the rest of the league. Those kids? Them? But yes. Them. The misfits. The underdogs. The team no one believed in. And Nil, he wasn't just the best player on their team. He became the best player in the tournament. He led with quiet confidence, assisted like a general, scored like a star, and inspired like a leader. And every time the spotlight found him, he looked to the sidelines, not at the crowd, not at the scouts, but at Coach Ben. After the finals, the school flooded with college letters. Nil got full ride offers. So did Marcus. So did 2 more. Their futures, once foggy, now blazed with opportunity. At the awards banquet, the principal stepped forward and gave a speech. She smiled as she gestured toward Ben. This man didn't just coach a team. He restored belief. He built a family. And today, thanks to him, many of our boys are going to college. Not just as athletes, but as men. Ben stood slowly, emotion swelling in his chest. The applause was deafening, but he didn't hear it. His eyes found Nil's, who nodded at him with a calm, respectful smile. The kind that says, "You changed my life." Ben swallowed hard. He had always thought that his story ended the day his knee gave out. That his dream had been crushed in that moment on the field years ago. But he was wrong. His story didn't end there, it began. Because he didn't need to be a star player to become a legend. He just needed to become a coach.